Standard contract clauses are changing. Well, they've been in the process of changing now for a couple of years, but by the end of this year, any agreement that you have that has standard contractual clauses in it has to be replaced from the old models to the new ones. But before you get started, you need to understand your role here, because you've probably seen it. There's processors, there's sub-processors, there's controllers, independent controllers, and you need to understand as your vendor any one of these. And we're not going to go into any depth as to what each one of these are. We've got an article in the description below that covers that for you. But if you do want it in video format, just let me know in the comments and we'll put something together. But you also need to know where your vendor resides in terms of what country they're in, and also the data centers or where the transfers of data occur. And then you need to know where the data is stored prior to the transfer and after the transfer. There's a lot you need to know, and all of this is within your contractual documents. It should be within your data processing agreement or some other part of that document, right? So we have the data in our contracts. We now need to get it out of there. I appreciate that some legal teams, legal ops teams, contract management teams may be tracking all of their contracts and certain data points on, say, an Excel or Google Sheets tracker document. And it can be extremely difficult to do all of this in that format. So I'm going to talk to you about how I did this in my previous role using Gatekeeper, just to make it a little bit easy. So I made specific fields in Gatekeeper that track this kind of data. So I ensured that the data points I created were tracked in my contract review and signature workflow or my digitized process. So I was capturing all of the data points that I made. So whether that is the location of data, the type of SCC that we were agreeing to, because that's important, right? Because I was aware that the EU were making changes regarding SCCs, but not all of the vendors that I was dealing with at the time had made changes to their data processing agreements, and I was heavily reliant on third-party terms at the time, especially when you're buying a lot of SaaS, PaaS, just a lot of software contracts. It's very unlikely that you're going to be issuing your own terms out for those types of agreements. So I was capturing what the data was there. I was also having conversations with the vendors around the subject matter. So I was in Gatekeeper sending off messages saying, hey, appreciate that you've got the current version of the SCCs in. Do you know when you're going to get the new ones in? How are we going to handle that changeover? And they would typically get back to me and just say, hey, yeah, we're working on this. We're going to have it done by this date. And we will then reach out to you proactively so we can make the change. And I was like, hey, that's great. And some, of course, were like, hey, we're miles away. We're so far away from doing this. We'll probably be going to the wire. And that also allowed me to determine like the priorities here, right? I could indicate which ones were being proactive, which ones were a little less active on the matter. So when it came to figuring out what needed to be done in terms of the project plan, because this needs to be treated like a project, I could filter all of these data points that I had created within Gatekeeper for each of my contracts. So firstly, I filtered by the contract type, and I would select data processing agreement. And then from there, include all of those key data points that I had created, save that view of this filter. So whenever I need to look at it for this project, I just click on, hey, I want this view. So for all of these contracts that have the old SCCs, I'm going to pull these out and put them into my contract variation workflow. And I'm going to start engaging with the vendor there and say, hey, vendor, we need to make these changes to the SCCs. I've probably got some correspondence, like I said, from the earlier time that I was dealing with them. But if I don't, because it's unrealistic to think that I can probably engage every vendor in this way, then we're just going to deal with it afresh here. And I'm going to track this using the Kanban workflow. So the Kanban view, which is, just cards under each phase, looks great, easy to monitor progress throughout each phase of the contract variation process that I've got in place here. And we're just going to track this all the way through to completion. And once we've got the new SCCs agreed, negotiated if need be, and in place and signed, this is going to pull through to my contract record and create a new entry or an updated entry, depending on what I want in that scenario. And I can then just go back to that saved view I've got of all of my data processing agreements and just make sure that I'm on top of everything, that we've closed down the amount of DPAs that need updating, and I can refer back to my workflow at any time to see the in progress state of affairs there. And all of that is done using simple data points that I've created bespoke to the scenario that I'm in Gatekeeper in its incredible, powerful contract record and repository area, and then utilizing the workflows, which are so powerful and genius that I can just do anything effectively that I want. I can build any type of digital process in there, make use of all the efficiencies, auto actions that create contract documents without me even pressing a button. It genuinely saved me so much time, and you could use this for any use case, right? Say, hey, we need to update all of our intellectual property clauses because the clauses that we've got with our third parties, the wording was slightly off in one area, and we want to update that to make sure our rights are protected. Well, you can just make a data point for that, collect all the data, and then go out in the same manner of which I've just showed you here to tackle that. And if you want to harness the power of Gatekeeper even more, then I suggest you watch this video just here. It's about RAG statuses, where you can assign those statuses to those vendors or contracts depending on what's going on with them. Whether they're underperforming, overperforming, great, right? Like, it's good to track that and get a visual cue for everyone in your entire business to promote visibility. I'll see you soon, my friends.